Okay, thank you, Wendy, and welcome everyone to this, the fourth Housing Repairs online show and share. Next slide, please. Before I share with you what we're going to cover today, just want to remind everyone why we do these show and shares. It's an opportunity for the core team to celebrate what they've achieved, demo working software, and give up information on progress made. But most importantly, it's for you, our collaborators and supporters, to have the opportunity to give us feedback and ask questions. Next slide. So what are we going to cover today? Well, in a moment, I will remind you of who is in the core team, share our vision before handing over to Bhavesh and Elle from our engineering team, who will tell you what they're doing to ensure that the tool is reusable. We'll then hear from Theon, for our user researcher, and Fraser, our product owner, who will share with you what user testing has been done and how the prototype has subsequently been iterated. I'll then just give a general update on the progress made and our focus for the next sprint before handing back to Fraser, who will share with you how to engage with the project, and then we'll have sufficient time to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, so who is in the core team? We have Fraser Chickett, our product owner from Lincoln Council, myself, Paul Clemson, the delivery manager from Maytech, Leon Aki, who's our engagement manager from Local Digital, who are funding this project, Bhavesh Patel, our lead engineer from Maytech, Jide Amatajo from Southwark Council, Wendy Banks, our business analyst from Lincoln Council, Theon Johnson, our user researcher from Maytech, Elle Villamarte from our senior engineer from Maytech, Jim Bowen, who is represented in the Thistle IT group, Mesa Canoni, engineer from Maytech, and finally, as is Amra, our UX designer from Maytech. So what is our vision? Our vision is to design and build a reusable and accessible online repair reporting tool that requires no login, and most critically, residents prefer to use as it meets their needs. A tool that is integratable with various scheduling systems through open, scalable and accessible APIs, enabling the tool to be adopted by local authorities across the UK. I'm now going to hand over to Bhavesh and Elle from our engineering team.
So as part of building a reusable tool, we have been working on an SOR engine. SORs are a schedule of rates, which are used for councils to basically book various repairs and calculate their costs. There are over 2,000 different SOR codes that are used by councils across the country, but each one only uses a small subset of these codes. And defining this this engine will enable each organization to customize the tool with the codes that they use. And right now, our tool will support 50 SOR codes so that the residents are able to book their various repairs. Another part of building a reusable tool is defining our infrastructure as code. This will allow us to easily manage our cloud resources and replicate the production environment quickly in other Azure environments. An added benefit to this is that because we've defined it once as code for Azure, it will be quite easy for us to translate that into other cloud providers. And also having this infrastructure defined as code will prevent us from having unnecessary dangling resources, so that we provision only the resources we want and save money. Now I'm going to hand over to Theon to talk about user research. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm just going to take you through the prototype that we used for testing in our initial round of research, and I did that at a retired sheltered housing community estate. So all the residents were 65 and over, and they didn't have regular access to a computer and were identified through a survey to be low confidence users. So they were digitally excluded and low confidence. So essentially, if we did research with them, get all really amazing insights, if we can make it work for them, we can make it work for a whole bunch of people. So I'll just walk you through the prototype that we used for testing, and I'll go through kind of some of the high level overarching insights that came from the sessions. Has that worked at all?
It's nearly there. Yeah, we can see it, Phil. Thank you.
Lovely. So with this is the initial page. So the landing page, there was no major problems. There was a little bit of confusion with people trying to start the session, as in some people thought the selecting leaseholder repairs would get them to initiate their journey, and some people thought that the journey related to an emergency or communal repair. That was basically bubbled down to a little bit of confusion and like not an establishmental model with like government websites. When I explained it, they did understand. So that was not as much of a major concern, but would still be useful to test whether people understand where to start. Then as well with this page, so I had different scenarios. One of the scenarios, for example, I'll go through using that, was that they one of their kitchen sink taps was broken, specifically their hot water tap. And I wanted them to identify the repair on the service. So I did it specifically because I thought that maybe some people would think that it was an emergency. So some people selected that they have no hot water, which wasn't actually the case. It was just their hot water in their kitchen. But it was useful for us to understand if there was anything we could do content-wise to make sure people know that this, like their problem isn't an emergency. So essentially, I'm just going to go through the happy route. So essentially, we wanted users to click something else, but some people said that I have no water. So that was really useful insight for us to extract. This area was no issues. Everyone that I tested with knew what a communal area was. No one went into the accordion, which explains what a communal area is. It'll be useful to test with a different group of people, because obviously in the communal estate, people know what communal area is because they live on an estate which has a lot of these spaces. So hopefully in this new round, I'll be testing with people who might not know that. So it'll be interesting to know if there's any difference. But yeah, no problems here. Same with finding the address. There was literally no problems with, so selecting the postcode, and then you select from the drop down. Everyone was able to find the address from the list. And when I asked what people expected, if they couldn't find their address on the list, some people said they'd select this. Some people said that they expect to do manual entry. But essentially, there was a lot of the information that we got from these pages, like aligned with the things that we expected to hear and see from users. But yeah, the fact that they were making use of this link was really, really good. I'll later show you the analysis board that I created, but this was probably the major issue with the prototype in terms of us knowing we needed to improve this area. So essentially everyone knew the location of the room. So with the example that I used, it was the kitchen sink. So everyone was able to select kitchen. But it's when they got to this bit. And so this was the area that we thought, which we got the most insight from, because essentially with both the scenarios that I used with users, a second scenario related to an extractor fan in their bathroom, none of the participants were able to identify their problem from the list provided. So it showed us that they didn't know where to go essentially. So we really had to think about how can we allow users to know where to go so they're making the right choices. So from this, no, like people were hesitating between hot water and sink, but some people would say like, but it's not my sink, it's my taps, for example. And some people would select hot water, but when they go there, I'll just show you quickly, taps isn't on there. So at this point, they'd be like, I don't know what to do because it's not showing my option. So some people would say they wanted a little bit more guidance. Some people would say they'd want like an extra option where they could just type in their problem. There's a lot of different suggestions, and it gave us like really useful insights to know that this is the area that we actually do need to have a lot of design consideration on, because it caused like quite a few issues for people. So yeah, I'll go through the happy path. So if someone selects sink, then they can select taps, and these are the other options as well that continue. And this is to describe your problem page. So you have a little bit of guidance here. And also at this point, we say that you can only report one problem at a time. And some users mentioned at this point that they weren't aware that they could only report one problem at a time. And also at the end, someone said that at the end of the journey. So that was another design consideration, whether we need to make it clear at the beginning of the journey or clearer that someone can only report one problem at a time. And so, yeah, so we have this text box where someone would like write their problem in. This was no issues. Like everyone was able to type out that problem completely fine. But there was differences between people who read the guidance, people who didn't read the guidance, but it wasn't any cause for concern. Some people just don't read guidance. That's absolutely fine. They still describe their problem correctly and appropriately. And So with the photo upload, however, because we were testing with low confidence users and users who don't have regular access to a computer, this was really interesting to go through with them, especially in relation to the criteria that we have, because only 2 out of the 9 actually understood the criteria that we have provided. And even with the 2 who did understand, when I asked them if they could show me, there was a little bit of hesitation. It took them a while to explain themselves. So it's just a lot of mental process for the 2 out of 9 users who did actually kind of understand what the JPEG was, for example, what kind of image size it was. But for the majority of users, they didn't really understand a lot of the guidance. And when they did upload their file, some weren't actually sure whether it was uploaded or not. So on the side, it comes up with like screenshot or image and it says the number. But a lot of users were expecting to either see the image or have some sort of confirmation that the image has come up, or a few other things like that, essentially. So that was really useful to know, to make it clear that someone's uploaded the right image. And also, how can we let people know that they've uploaded the correct image? And even if we do let them know, is any of this even appropriate? Because is it adding more confusion to people when realistically a lot of files that people have will be compatible? And also another note that when 2 users were trying to upload a file, they selected continue instead of choose file. They didn't notice the choose file option, as they thought continue would allow them to upload the files. That was also another useful note from this page. Before booking the appointment, so this is the page which allows participants to essentially, not participants, tenants or leaseholders or whoever's using the service, to let the council know if they have any medical conditions or disabilities, whether they're a carer reporting on behalf of someone else, whether they have any access restrictions or not. And for this was really useful because essentially we saw users, if it didn't apply to them, they would just write none or NA or not apply, or all these different versions of the same word. So it kind of became obvious that we're giving people like the space to do, basically when people are typing things when they don't actually need to type or say anything. And then as well, we're reporting on behalf of someone else. Someone mentioned that this page is quite a lot and it should be broken down a little bit more, because I tested with a carer and she was saying that essentially this is quite a lot of information to put in 200 characters. So it was useful to get our attention directed into maybe breaking down this page a little bit more and how we do that. And if we did have this page, like, is it actually relevant for the council to know this information, and whether the council already holds this information? So does it even add value to the journey, that sort of thing? So yeah, that was that page. And then when are you available? This is when someone books the appointment. So they can select between these times. Everyone was able to select a time that suited them, but some people expected to see later dates in a sort of calendar style with like a few weeks later, just in case they can't make the dates available to them here. And as well, there was another bit where at this point it wasn't really clear to users, and I'll talk about it later, when their appointment was actually booked. So I selected the 13th of October, and then you add your phone number here and you can type whatever number. People did that completely fine. And then it got to this point and there was this split of users who thought at this point that their appointment had been booked, and another half of users that thought that right at the end when they confirmed and reported that was when their appointment was booked. So that was another design consideration, like, are we adding confusion to the journey on when their appointment is actually booked, as in you have this time slot? So how can we make it clear to users that it's not actually at this point that you have your time, that your appointment is booked, is when you confirm and report? So that was another consideration as well that was really useful. And yeah, just contact details. This page went fairly okay. Some people expressed a little bit of frustration having to duplicate, like re-enter their phone number because they did it on the previous page, but not as much as annoyance to stop someone at this point of the journey. And so yeah, that went through. This is a report summary page. So yeah, there was a few things that came up in terms of bugs. So this issue column, and then if I asked someone to go back and change their details, everyone selected this change button. So that as well worked perfectly. So that was really useful to see that people actually understood that they can change their details at any point and then confirm and report. This is the last page where people get the confirm and report bit, and again about reporting another issue. Some people would only realise here that they can report another, like an issue at a time. So again, making it clear at the beginning that you can only report one at a time, and they shouldn't have to get to the end to realise that. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly show you the analysis board that we used. So essentially, to make it easily digestible for the team, I added all the screenshots of the service onto this Miro board, and I thought just so people can see what was good, what was like just general comments, and what we really need to work on. At the top of the screen, I added, essentially this is a happy path, so I added all the notes to the people who did the things that we wanted them to do. So as I said, I went through the happy path when I just went through the demo. So I went through as if the user doing everything that we wanted them to do. So I added all those notes at the top of the screen. In the middle of the screen, I added the notes of the general comments about the page. And then at the bottom of the screen, I added the notes from the users who didn't do what we wanted them to do. So I'll just show you the whole expanse of the board. And then you can see like visually that they're like the key problem areas was the identification bit, because we have all of these notes at the bottom, and that like these pages went perfectly all right. And then as well, these pages, a lot of general comments, some good, some bad, so people can visually see like where to focus on. And then as well, as I went through with the team, I gave them how might we bubbles and design consideration bubbles. So essentially, as we went through, I talked through all the notes, all the insights, and then we went through as a team and got people to get these yellow bubbles to add all their design considerations and things you might need to improve. So say specifically on this page, when talking about the hot water taps example, some people selecting hot water taps, say like how can we make it clearer essentially what is an emergency, what isn't an emergency. So that kind of setup design in a way to focus on, okay, what can we improve, what can we prioritize in the next round, what are areas that we could like feasibly do over the next 2 weeks and improve upon to make sure that we're testing in the next and last round. So we had these bubbles, and then so that's essentially all the analysis that we did, and it's all laid out like this. And I've got these success criteria here, so I'll quickly go through those. So 3 out of the 8 could identify their whole problem correctly. So as in going through the radio buttons where they identified, oh, it's a kitchen, oh, it's my kitchen sink, all of that. 9 out of 9 could describe their problem contextually. 7 out of 9 could upload the image to a page, so it actually selected choose file and the file came up on the page, but only 2 out of 9 actually understood that they uploaded the correct image. And all of the participants were able to select their appointment with the council, but only 5 thought that their appointment was booked right after selecting the appointment slot, and 3 thought that it would be booked once they reported the whole problem, and 1 was still unsure as to whether it was booked at all, because they said that they'd phoned to just confirm with the council that their appointment was booked. So that as well gives a few like numbers and quantifies a few of the findings from all of everything that I kind of have already gone through. So yeah, essentially that is all the analysis and everything that happened in the first round. And then Fraser is now going to talk about essentially what we've done in terms of extracting those findings into workable solutions for this round that I'm going to be starting today, actually. So yeah.
Just checking that my screen's come back for everybody, yeah?
Yes, it's there.
Perfect. So yeah, just carrying on from what Fiona just said, and also really picking up on that important point that Paul had made earlier on, in that what we're trying to do here is design a process around the customer's needs. So that's why the user research is so important to us, and why we're really responding and taking note of how customers are engaging with this as a process so far. So with that in mind, we'd already made some changes based on this feedback. We've had a bit of a reshuffle on here and made it clearer about the repair types that were available. Picking up on that point before as well about people getting confused about whether the hot water issue was an emergency or not. Well, we've tried to add some definition and clarity around this by adding in the whole property on here. And we've also expanded on this option down here, which is that it's not an emergency for the property. So we'll be interested to see what these changes and the impact that this has on the researchers that we're engaging with this week. We know that the communal repair one was okay, so I'll click past this, but just want to pick up on this point. Rather than it saying continue, we're actually prompting the user about what's coming next in the text of these buttons. So it just makes it a bit clearer about what's going to happen when they click this button. So this was where we're starting to get to what we'll probably classify as the pain points before for the customer. I'll stick with the tap issue. I'll go for bathroom on here. And we've just started to expand out some of these textual descriptions on here so that it gives the customer hopefully a bit more of an indication of what's included in that as a group. Originally, we were using just the text that were from the SOR groupings that we had. So we just tried to make this a lot clearer about what the issue is that they can report. So we've got that there's extractor fan and pull cords. We've got walls and ceilings excluding the damp because that has its own issue grouping on there. And in the example we're looking at, we've got the sinks including taps and drainage. And we've further expanded out some of the information on here as well. So we're hoping that customers will be able to use this a lot easier during this round of testing. We spoke before about that there were issues with customers uploading their photographs on here. We've taken away that guidance because it just created that confusion before. The process itself will let the customer know if there is an issue. So if they try to upload a doc file, for example, then it won't let them do that. And if they try to upload a file that's too big, it will prevent them doing that. But most people will be likely accessing this from a mobile phone, and they'll just be taken to their camera app and not have an issue with it. So again, we're hoping that this clarity on this will make the journey less friction. Oh. Don't know what that really means, but we'll use that as an example. So again, picking up on that point before, that there's quite a bit of confusion around customers in terms of why we wanted their number. We've got a lot of text on this page. So what we're trying to say now is just provide us a number that we can call on the day if we need to on there. And we've reduced the options on how do we confirm the appointment to text message and email, because the phone option was there, but really we wouldn't be ringing a customer back to give confirmation of the appointment. This is a digital service, so we want to be using the GovNotify tools. So we'll be either sending a text message, which is what we prefer, or an email one as well. So I can put my message in there. And we've expanded the number of days that are available on this page and added the ability to pull some more days through if those first ones aren't actually applicable to the customer or they can't make those. And we've also made some minor text changes on this last page to make these nice and clear about what the elements that they've reported are. We've still got those abilities for people to go back and change and update their process. And it's nice that we've got this clarity about that green button about what's actually happening next. So we have a SMS template ready and available that we'll also use for the emails. At that point, something will be triggered out to the customer to let them know they've had a successful journey on this. So yeah, we've learned a lot from that previous round on their testing. We've tried to feed that back into the prototype, and we'll be finding out this week if those changes we've had have implemented have really had the impact that we hope they will have. But one thing we're really confident of is that it's in a much better place than it ever has been as a product. Where we've come from the alpha stages, it really has moved on a lot. I mean, if anybody has the time to go back and watch perhaps one of our show and shares from those alpha stages and see what the product looked like then to now, we've really got that idea of this being reusable in mind with that SOR engine that Bhavesh and Elle have already covered for us. So yeah, we're really hopeful that those changes will be impacting the progress of this project. I'll hand over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Fraser. So just to quickly run through the progress made in the last sprint. As you just heard, we've captured key findings from our first round of user research. We subsequently iterated the prototype to improve the user experience even further. And we signed off on the MVP scope. So the iterated prototype is now version 3, and that will be the MVP that will go live. We've built a SOR engine, as you heard, to ensure that we support customizable SOR subsets from each of the local authorities that may adopt this tool. We've configured both the repairs and housing management APIs so they only respond to authenticated requests. We've initiated the setting up of infrastructure as code within the Azure cloud, and we started to rework those MVP pages that we'd built, but based on V2 of the prototype, so that they now reflect what's in V3. And as Theon says, we've planned our second round of user research. So our focus for the next sprint will be continue to build the housing management system API to interface with universal housing. As Theon says, we're starting to conduct our second round of user research today. We'll then analyze the user research data and catch any findings. We'll create prototype version 4. So if this will effectively be the next release after MVP goes live, and it will incorporate any further design considerations that come out of the user research. We'll continue setting up the infrastructure as code, and we'll complete the rework of the built MVP pages. And also we'll start to build new MVP pages based on the prototype that you've just been walked through. Over to you, Fraser.
Thanks, Paul. So just want to remind everybody, I keep banging the drum on this one every couple of weeks, but please engage with the project where you can. Share the links out that are on screen with anybody in the sector that you work with. We've got our hashtag of repairs online. If you pop that into Twitter, LinkedIn as well, you'll get information on previous and past posts. But there's quite a lot of information on the website, right going back from the discovery days on there. So yeah, please share this out with colleagues, shout about it. We just want to get as many councils involved in this as possible and to get that feedback and input into it. Which leads us nicely on to if there's any questions.
I was just going to add there, Fraser, so everyone can, if you get the DLUC newsletter, there is actually a feature today in that newsletter based on the project, so you can get an update there as well.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah.
So any questions?
We must have had a comprehensive presentation, I guess.
I've got a question for you. So my name's Paul. I work with Camden Council. As you might know, we're sort of doing a similar sort of discovery process at the moment. One of the things I'm just curious about is how you're factoring in the sort of back office side of things and the sort of processes that the people have to go through, whether that's using new systems or adapting existing systems. Are those being sort of looked at as part of the work you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, that's right, Paul. I mean, we're very much treating this as our MVP. So we're aware that ultimately we want perhaps fully fledged integration with the housing management systems, but for what we're looking at the moment is about completing the journey from the customer's perspective. So we're looking to do our integration and our API layer just with the scheduling software suppliers in this first round. We're focusing on DRS because A, the two partners are involved have got that as a product, and B, it's one of the market leaders. We will be looking to expand that in the future. But the housing management kind of system side of it will still be a manual input process, but that isn't adding pressure to the staff in those areas because it's something that they're doing anyway for us. There isn't really a good online repair service in place at our authorities at least. So what will be reduced is the number of calls actually requesting that contact and trying to describe the repair. We've got that extra information of people being able to upload the photos, etc., that will be hopefully stored in DRS. So I guess it's quite a long answer to say, yes, we are looking at those back-end processes. They largely won't change for the customer service assistants in terms of registering the repair, but hopefully it will be reduced because they'll have all the information to hand. Does that answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, no, sure. It's really interesting to hear about your approach. That's great because obviously, you know, it's good to have a narrow iterative approach to doing it, I think, and as we're finding, it's easy to sort of spiral off into quite deep discussions and paths if you go too far into some of the other kind of aspects around how things currently work. So that's really insightful, Fraser. Thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, it was that when we looked at this in Discover Round, there's too much variation between housing management systems, scheduling systems, then versions layered on top of that at each council. It's too much to bite off. So we just really want to try and prove that principle that from the customer's perspective, if we complete their side of the journey, will they use this as a product before we get too deep and messy within trying to integrate with every known configuration we've got.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Cheers.
Okay.
Any further questions from anyone?
There's a question in the chat, Paul, I believe from Matthew Hillman, asking, as well as some wonderful compliments, which I entirely back. It's amazing to see the work of the team. Asking about how this would integrate into iProperty. Fraser, I believe you might have discussed that before by the looks of it.
Matt, yeah, thanks for the question. It would require a similar development kind of path in here. However, the APIs for Microsoft Field Service are open, so that they offer the same services that DRS does if DRS element was actually likely to change. Can't comment on that at the moment. However, yeah, we've got an eye on that. With Lincoln's role being the leaders for this as a project, it's something that it's kind of our internal issue at the moment. We're still pressing on with our current setup so that we can prove what we need to for the greater good anyway. And in any specification that goes forward for the replacement of Lincoln's housing management system, then we need to factor this in if we want to continue using it as a product. But yeah, I don't have any nervousness about it working with what we're looking at.
And just saying, just as an offer, if it would help, I'm happy, Matt, if you want to drop me a line or drop any of the team a line, we can maybe get someone to give you a call and look into that in a bit more detail from a technical perspective.
Appreciate that, thanks. I thought I'd start off with a nice compliment, you see, then always offers of help coming in there. So.
Yeah, you can get anywhere with flattery.
Okay. Any further questions? Either put them in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask the team. If there's no further questions, then I just want to thank everyone for attending today. Hopefully you got something out of the show and share, and maybe, like as we say, we've got our friends from Camden today, and that maybe shape their thinking going forward. If you want to keep up to date with the project, then please look at the blog that goes out on a weekly basis, and you'll see the updates there, and also a video of this show and share. So we'll end the call there and thank everyone for attending. And see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.